Hey everybody, it's Mark Wisdom, the beer guy again, and we're back at Jacksonville Beach at one of the other breweries and brew pubs here in the Jacksonville area. Today, we're at Engine15 Brewing Company, where they not only have their own beers on tap, they have a lot of other great beers from other breweries. Let's go inside. Just like a lot of the other local breweries, this one was started by a couple of friends who just wanted to make some great beer. Let's see what they've done. Hey David,
hey Mark,
how you doing?
Good.
This is David Marinas, one of the brewers here at Engine15.
Want to check out the brewery?
Yeah, let's go.
Well, Mark, welcome to the brew pub here on Beach Boulevard. This is where Engine15 began. We have a production facility downtown now, but now here we pretty much just brew all of our seasonal beers for tap here in the brew pub, and also one-off special beers that we brew and again are only available here in the tap room. All of our core brands like Old Battle Axe IPA, Route 90 Rye, 904 Vice Guy, Jayville Lager, and Old Battle Axe IPA are all brewed downtown at the production facility.
Down on Myrtle Street.
Yes, on Myrtle and Beaver Avenue. Myrtle Avenue and Beaver Street.
So how long has that been in existence?
We've been brewing beer down there for about a year now. So we started up there about a year. We're hoping to have a tap room there, hopefully open sometime next year. We're waiting for some rezoning from the city.
Great. I mean, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be an awesome place. I've heard the plans about the beer garden you want to have down there and everything. But let's talk about this location, because this is where everything started. We talked about earlier, not you and I, but we talked about it in our opening that, as is the case with many breweries, it started as two friends who liked beer, and they decided to start brewing beer and got good at it and decided to open a place. But this place started a little bit differently. They were going to offer people the ability to brew beer on their own.
Yeah, we did start a little bit differently. We started off first as a beer bar. We didn't brew beer right from the beginning. That's one of the reasons we still have so many guest taps. We started just as a beer bar, and about 4 or 5 months after that, we actually started brewing beer here. And during that whole time as well, we did what was called brew on premise, which is where people could actually come in and brew their own beer here on site. When we opened up the downtown production brewery, we kind of expanded the bar here in the back. So unfortunately, we had to do away with that. But it was a lot of fun and introduced a lot of people to craft beer, which was awesome.
Which is really great, because the craft beer world thrives on that, and the more we get people interested in doing that, the more breweries we end up getting, because people really get into the brewing of their own beer and testing out the whole new flavors, which is sort of what you do here, because this is where you do all of the seasonals and the experimental beers.
Correct. This is, so any beer that is something we want to try out, or maybe it was something we've done a small batch of before, this is the test lab, I guess you could say. We brew a batch here, we put it on in the tap room, and then we go from there, we see how well it does. Jayville Lager, which is one of our new core beers, which is in distribution around town, actually started off as a tap room only beer right here in the brew pub.
That's an interesting thing, because there's really not that many craft lagers out there. Everything's usually an ale. So what's really the difference between a craft lager and a craft ale?
Well, typically the main difference between ales and lagers is lagers, they're both fermented with yeast, but they're different strains. So you can kind of look at them maybe as cousins. They're not quite the same, they're different. Lager yeasts usually like to ferment at a lower temperature. That's typically why the beers are crisper and cleaner. There's less phenolics and things given off by lager yeast than they're all ale yeast. Lagers are also traditionally cold aged for a certain period of time. Lager is actually a derivative of a German word called lagern, which means to put away or to store. Okay. So it was beers that they brewed in the winter and let sit through the entire summer, and then so they could drink again in the fall.
That's really good information right there, and I think our viewers are going to really enjoy that. What kind of special things do you have brewing in here right now?
We have a couple beers, because it's getting a little bit cooler, so we have a couple darker beers coming. We have a chocolate and coconut infused stout, which is we're hoping will be really popular. Yeah, it was another beer that we've done as a small batch, which was really popular. We also have a smoked porter coming up, which is, again, another kind of cooler weather beer, and it's brewed with a small portion of smoked malt, which lends kind of a smoky flavor to it. It actually uses peated malt, which is the same thing that they use to make scotch, so
wow.
It has kind of like that smoky scotch flavor going on in it.
All this talk about beer has got me thirsty.
Well, let's go grab a beer.
Let's go get some. So David, I see we have a platter of beers in front of us here. Tell us a little bit about what we have here.
Well, we have a sampling of the different beers here we have to offer. The first one is Nutsack Imperial Brown Ale. Then we have Jayville American Lager, Old Battle Axe IPA, and Mad Max, which is a smoked alt beer, actually.
Wow, they all sound great. Can we try them?
Sure, absolutely.
All right.
Let's start with Nutsack. So Nutsack's an Imperial Brown Ale, as you can tell by the color. And what makes it Imperial is it has a higher percentage of malts, which lends to usually more alcohol and usually more flavor as well. So we started with a base style of a brown ale, and then Imperial just kind of makes it double essentially. And that's it's a nut brown ale, so that's where the name Nutsack comes from.
Right, I'm getting lots of nuttiness and sweetness in it.
Exactly, yeah. The malts really lend to kind of a nutty taste in the beer, and quite pleasing actually.
It's one of my favorites.
Awesome. So next up is one we talked about earlier, and it's a craft lager essentially. Mm-hmm. So whereas lagers are lighter beers typically, and whereas a beer like say Budweiser would use a lot of rice or corn as part of the malt, in a craft lager it's usually 100% malt. Lager yeast though still, so it's still nice, clean, and crisp, but all malt, so it has a little bit more malty flavor to it.
So is this something you would call maybe like a summer beer or a lawnmower beer?
Well, lagers, yeah, are excellent to drink in the summer. Some people would call them lawnmower beers. They're just usually lighter in body and lighter in texture, so good for all-day drinking, at the beach, at the football game. Obviously not as heavy as Nutsack, where you probably want to drink all day long. Yeah. So the next one up is Old Battle Axe IPA. IPA is a style of beer called India Pale Ale. Actually got its name from when India was a colony of Britain and they would ship beer to India. The beer they shipped to India they called India Pale Ale. It has a lot of hops in it, which more hops than the previous two beers, which lend kind of floral and citry and piney notes to the beer.
Oh, I can certainly smell the pine when you smell it.
Yeah, the predominant hop in Old Battle Axe is called Summit, and Summit has a lot of kind of piney, evergreen flavors associated with it.
It's very prevalent in there, very prevalent.
And finally is probably one of the most different beers in the lineup here. It's called Mad Max. It's our version of a smoked beer, but instead of using smoked malts in it, we actually use chipotle peppers, which are smoked. So it'll have a tiny bit of pepper bite to it, but a lot of smoke from those chipotle peppers.
Wow, it's almost as if there's a bacony flavor to it.
Yeah, the chipotles lend that kind of smoke to it, which lots of people associate with bacon.
Right, and you can just barely get a little bit of the spice.
You just get a little bit of spice on the end of it. It's the peppers are there mostly to provide smoky flavor and not so much heat.
Well, at least these 4 beers are awesome. I know you have many, many more beers on tap at the tap room here.
Yeah, at any given time we'll have anywhere from 15 to 20 or so beers of ours on.
And that's outstanding. This has been a wonderful introduction to the beers that you have here at Engine15.
Glad you enjoyed them.
I did.
Well, Mark, thanks for coming out and seeing us here at Engine15 Brewing Company. I hope you enjoyed the Nutsack Brown Ale.
I always do. It's a great beer. And we're going to get back out on the ale trail, but I hope we're going to see you again real soon.
Excellent.
So, follow along. We're going to be back out on the trail soon.